Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed for part 2 of the December Q&A series. We're back for more of your excellent questions that we'll be getting to in just a moment, but before we do...
Today's sponsor spot is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and their new Duranaut high-performance thermal paste. Duranaut offers extreme long-term stability combined with outstanding thermal conductivity, and this has been achieved through a specially engineered silicon oil combined with aluminium microparticles and zinc oxide nanoparticles of various shapes. Duranaut isn't electrically conductive and won't harden over time. For best performance, you'll want to apply a very thin layer, and to help with this, included is the TG Spatula Pro. The spatula's revised design allows for increased pressure during application, making it easy to spread a thin, even layer of Duranaut. So for more information, please check the link in the video description. Why do you think AMD decided to change the naming of the upscaling technology formerly known as FSR 4? It got a lot of good press. Why confuse everyone by rebranding? Pretty good point, I reckon.
Yeah, well, I think there's kind of like the obvious answer to this, which is AMD wanted to align the branding of all their new FSR Redstone technologies. None of the other ones had version numbers associated with it, so they decided to change the name of FSR 4 to FSR Upscaling, which goes along with FSR Frame Generation, FSR Ray Regeneration, and FSR Radiance Caching, I think. So none of those have version numbers. That is the basic answer, right? That's why they did it. Now, the other reason, of course, is AMD doing AMD things.
Ah, yes.
So, yeah, from my perspective, this really doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, I get they're trying to align everything nicely and it looks all nice in a little chart or graphic. Everything's got the same sort of name.
AMD doing AMD things, and I have to admit, this doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm like, that's right.
Yeah, I mean... Yeah, FSR 4 to me it was like the first time that people, I think, were broadly positive about FSR. People were sort of, FSR 1 and 2 and stuff had some positive strengths at times, but largely people would go, FSR is not as good as DLSS, FSR 2 is not as good as DLSS 2, etc. And this would propagate throughout the time. So it always had this sort of maybe negative connotation relative to DLSS. But with FSR 4, people could go, oh, well, but it's not FSR 3. It's FSR 4. It's the better version, the good version that now enables high-quality upscaling for RDNA 4 owners. So it sort of had started to develop this positive reputation and sort of reversing some of the older stuff with FSR. But now that they've renamed it, they've sort of gone backwards. So it's like FSR upscaling, it could mean anything. It could mean version 4, the good version, or version 3, now called the analytical version, which is the not as good version. So it doesn't really make sense to me. I would have thought you'd want to move forward and sort of say, yes, RDNA 4, you have to buy an RDNA 4 GPU to get FSR 4. That's the upgrade you need to make. And if you have the older cards, you get the older versions of FSR. But now it's all FSR upscaling. So RDNA 3 has FSR upscaling. RDNA 4 has FSR upscaling. It's just one gets the machine learning version, one gets the analytical version. So it doesn't make any sense to me. Just very bizarre sort of thinking from them. NVIDIA still calls it DLSS 4. I know they call, the components, they've got the super resolution component, the frame generation component, but the latest version of the technology has always been branded as DLSS 4. And so maybe they could have done the same thing here. FSR 4 frame generation, FSR 4 super resolution, FSR 4 upscaling, whatever they want to call it. And even they could have just called the new technologies FSR 4 ray regeneration. Like, yeah, okay, there was no older version of that, but does it matter? I don't know. It's weird for me. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Rather than releasing a frame smoothing technology that breaks frame pacing, do you think AMD would have been better off saying they don't believe frame gen is useful and we're not developing it for their GPUs?
Now, that's an interesting question because I could see it going both ways, right? Like, there's clearly a group of people, I don't know how large it is, that doesn't like frame generation at all. And you can see that from the comments, especially on like the Redstone video.
There's definitely a large group of people where frame generation isn't useful or should never be used.
That's right. And then you see people in the comments sort of saying, I don't like frame generation. I never use it. I think it's a bad feature. Why are companies focusing on this? So I could sort of understand leaning into that in some sense, right? Like if you come out and say, well, we're not focusing our development effort on this, we're focusing it on insert other feature that may benefit gamers or whatever, then that could play with some parts of the audience. But then on the other hand, there's people that do use frame generation or look at NVIDIA's features and sort of go, why doesn't AMD have that sort of equivalent feature? So I guess they've got to cater for both crowds. So yeah, going that route of sort of saying, well, we don't really believe in this technology. Not sure how successful that would be, especially if NVIDIA is continuing to use it as a marketing feature. And as you've talked about, Steve, in like our podcasts and stuff, to some degree, AMD needs to play the game with these things. Like if NVIDIA is sort of, as much as we don't like them trying to claim things like the 5070 can be a 4090, that's clearly the way they're marketing cards. So if AMD is sort of doing it the quote unquote correct and right way, it's going to be hard to keep up with that sort of marketing side of things because NVIDIA can just claim stuff that isn't necessarily accurate. And then AMD's sort of out here sitting, well, we didn't bother making a frame gen tech in this scenario presented by the question, and we can't do that sort of marketing side of things. So yeah, I'm not sure. Do you think that they should have just not bothered with a feature like this that doesn't really work that well?
Well, yeah, if you're going to bother with it, it has to work. Well, I think if you're not going to bother with it, which I think personally I would be okay with, not really a fan of frame gen. Personally, it's not something I would use really in any game, whether it's games I commonly play or games I'm trying out. So I'd want them to come up with some other incentive to buy their products over a GeForce GPU, some other feature, or do something else better, is what I would prefer to see. It's a tough one, but for example, like you play a lot of variant games. Do you actually use frame generation much, or have you found an example where you would use it and found it to be of benefit?
Yeah, it depends on the game. So obviously multiplayer games, like I'm playing Battlefield 6 at the moment, wouldn't use frame gen in that game. I think for some titles, generally third person like action / platformer games where I'm playing via a controller tends to be where it works the best. So I think of a game like Black Myth Wukong, which again, like is fairly demanding on the high settings. So you may want to use that. And then, you know, in sort of like first person games, it's a little weird how it feels to play just with the sort of input side of things. You get the smoothness, but not the input. And then when you're playing with the mouse and keyboard in a first person game, it's, I don't know what's the way of putting it. It's like there's less gap between the inputs that you're doing and what's being displayed on screen. You can really flick things around, and frame generation doesn't work that well from the input side of things doing that. So I think of a game like Cyberpunk, that's not really a game I would use frame generation in. But then there are games, like I said, Black Myth Wukong. I think Assassin's Creed Shadows is another one where frame gen is okay in, just because it's that third-person controller-based game, because a controller does hide a lot of that latency stuff, because controllers are a sort of not a low latency, a high latency input device, which may upset controller players. But yeah, like mouse and keyboard first person stuff, generally no. But so it's really game dependent. I'm not like, I wouldn't say like all single player games I would use it in, because that's not the case. Like Star Wars Outlaws, I think I didn't end up liking it. I preferred turning down the settings. Borderlands 4, no. I don't, does it have, I think it does support it, but I don't think I used it because again, first person game.
Borderlands 4 does, yeah.
So first person title. So yeah, it's not like a thing like upscaling where I just turn it on in most games.
See, I quite like upscaling. I know a lot of people don't like upscaling as well. We see that in the comments, but I actually think upscaling's turned into quite a great technology. It works really well. I use it all the time, and I'll even use that in multiplayer games. But frame generation, I haven't really found a situation where I would say it was of great benefit, super useful.
I think I'd describe it sort of like it's not hugely compelling. Like it's not a feature I'm like, whoa, like I really need that in my life.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
right.
If a game, like let's say Black Myth Wukong came out and it didn't have frame generation, I would have been like, oh, that's really disappointing. Like I can't believe I can't get access to that feature. But if it launched without, let's say, upscaling, I'd be like, whoa, now that's a big miss in the game, right? So yeah, I get where you're coming from. I think AMD does need to sort of, instead of just copying the features that NVIDIA has with GeForce GPUs, coming up with more compelling alternate features. And that's how they could get away with not developing a frame generation feature. Is if there was, and we don't have this idea. If we had this idea, maybe we'd be millionaires because we could sell it off and make money. But, not that we would do that. But,
I would. I'd take all the credit.
Fair enough.
I'd say Tim didn't want any of the credit.
So yeah, I mean, if they could come up with like a feature that is more compelling than frame gen, requires their latest hardware, so it's beneficial for selling GPUs and that sort of thing, then yeah, that would have been sort of a better feature to focus on. But if they do commit to making the feature, they probably should make it work properly. And so that's been my frustration with FSR Redstone. Like the quality of the generated frames is perfectly fine. You're not getting amazing, like truly rendered frames quality, which is the case across all frame gen tech. They're still generated frames, but then it's usable. It's just that then it's not smooth, so the whole thing is pointless. So,
and it's meant to be a smoothing technology.
yeah, and what I was glad to see lately as well is when I published that video, I looked at other people's content. And a lot of other people were testing sort of that side of the technology, the frame pacing side of things. So you never know for sure whether it's just a way I was configuring it or an issue that I saw. But I saw Digital Foundry talking about this, I think in one of their latest, Digital Foundry Directs, whatever they do, podcasty sort of things. They found a very similar problem. So it's good to see that it's not just even though I did test on multiple systems, not just our setup where that was a problem. So yeah, AMD needs to fix it and commit to when making features, make them work. With AMD not willing to release an official version for FSR for Int 8 and the recent driver branch separation, how much does this change the GeForce versus Radeon value proposition? How much do you value Optiscaler in this discussion? See, a lot of people are very disappointed about the lack of like FSR for Int 8 being released as part of Redstone. We still don't really know whether that will ever be something that's released. This AMD's current sort of comment on it is just the usual no comment. So it's not like no, we're never doing it, but there's obviously no confirmation either. When it comes to like the value proposition of GeForce versus Radeon, it's not really relevant for the current cards because the current models have access to the FP8 normal version that's available. So not having Int 8 doesn't make a difference if you're tossing up like a 9060 XT versus 5060 Ti or whatever. Like, that's fine. The driver branch separation, now they did reverse course on that. So it's hard to sort of say, does it make me a bit more nervous about buying a Radeon card to some degree? But they did claim to not be doing that anymore. So you kind of have to take them to some degree at their word on that, I guess. Like,
for now,
they've said what they've said for now. So, and again, for like the latest cards, how much should you read into that for like the latest models? I feel like with some of the stuff for this question, it's more these are affecting older models, which don't really have that value discussion anymore. Like, we're not really sitting here saying what value would be placed on RDNA 3 versus like the RTX 40 series anymore, because those are old models.
It's more how much confidence do you have in the Radeon? Like,
yeah,
if they support their older products really well,
that's
it's
true.
kind of like the platform longevity thing. Like,
Yeah.
you're confident to buy an AM5 processor, knowing if you do so, you're going to be likely well looked after with good upgrade paths and places to go. So it's a bit like the Radeon thing. Like, if you buy a Radeon GPU today, is it likely that features to come in 1, 2, 3 years down the track will be supported on that GPU and add value to it? So it'll kind of potentially enhance the experience as you go, or are they going to be like, yeah, no new features, no new driver optimization. We've got the money from you. We're kind of done with you now. Buy a new thing if you want continued support.
Yeah, I mean that's an issue for sure, and I think it's probably more of an issue. Like, in some ways, right? Radeon has improved that sort of features gap because the upscaler is much better now. They've improved the video encoding quality from what I understand. It may not still be the same as GeForce or whatever, but a couple of the significant issues that they had with previous architectures is now improved with this current version. So that's great, and that means we can sort of shrink, I guess, the value difference that we need between those two brands. But then this is kind of going the other way. We have pretty good evidence of NVIDIA supporting GeForce cards for a while because DLSS 4 was released all the way back to the 20 series, which are pretty old cards at this point. And AMD's not doing the same for Radeon, especially with something like FSR for Int 8, where we know it exists. So it's not like we're just waiting for a mythical technology that we don't know whether it's there or not. Like, we've tested this feature. We know it's possible. And so not releasing it from that sense is very disappointing and not great for sort of, the longevity angle. But then it's hard again because like the RDNA 4 architecture does introduce a lot of things that will help AMD support features for longer. One of the issues with FSR 4 and older architectures is the lack of the AI acceleration instruction support. So that's why they have to make FSR 4 Int 8. FP8 instructions are not available on RDNA 3 or older architectures. They had to make a second version. That won't be, hopefully, as much of a problem with RDNA 4 because of the more widespread support for those things. So again, it's kind of like a very future-looking thing, isn't it? It's like we have to sort of predict, is the architecture good enough to support these features? I don't really know. But it's certainly, I'd be today more confident in GeForce feature longevity than Radeon. I think that's pretty fair to say. And AMD will need to put in a bit of work to sort of prove that they are supporting their cards for a longer period of time. And one of the easy win for AMD, FSR 4 Int 8 support for older GPUs. They should do that.
Is the end goal for companies to make gaming less accessible via hardware to push subscriptions such as GeForce NOW? The best PC could be built for $1,500 10 years ago. Yeah, it's probably true. To be fair, though, that's like $2,100 US, so $2,100 in today's money due to inflation.
Yeah. So you get a good PC for that, but obviously you're not even buying an entire 5090 for that amount.
No, but you still get what equates to about $2,000 US here in Australia. That's a pretty...
It's a good PC.
Yeah, it's like you could get a 9070 XT. You could still get 32 gigabytes of DDR5, 7800X3D or 9800X3D. So you get a pretty high-end system for that kind of money.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I've seen this opinion, I guess, a few times, like the whole, they're trying to get rid of client PCs and push people towards cloud-based for whatever, like whether it's gaming or other applications and tasks, everything will just be done in the cloud. Maybe that's possible for productivity because it's not as latency sensitive. But every time I've tried or attempted to try streamed gaming, it just sucks. Like, I'll just be perfectly honest, it sucks. I don't want to play that way. I don't think the experience is all that good. And so it's not really a consideration for me. Like, it's sort of like your opinion about console versus PC gaming. Like, consoles are cheaper, but if you want the PC experience, you're just not buying a console. And it's the same with PC gaming versus cloud gaming for me. PCs could be expensive, but if I want the best gaming experience, which is why I'm on the PC platform, I'm not going to compromise that to play laggy games on streaming services. I mean, they always claim we're making improvements to the lag and the delay and stuff, but it's just every time I've used it, and again, I haven't used the features recently, I guess, but the times I have used it, it's not for me. I'm not that casual enough of a gamer.
I think that's really what it comes down to, is I've seen people argue it's gotten good, it's pretty good now. It'll depend on the type of gamer you are and then the type of games you're playing. I can't imagine there's any environment where competitive shooters, for example, are good at using that that cloud service. I can't see it.
No, it makes sense. Like, I'm not saying don't have cloud gaming as an option. I think it's a really great option for a number of different use cases, especially I think of it as, let's say you want to try out a game and you don't want to download the entire game, and maybe it's available via some subscription, so you just pay a small fee, you try it out, easy, it's ready to go for you. Alternatively, there's different form factors of gaming devices these days. So if you've got a device where you don't necessarily want to download a game onto it again, and it's just very easy, able to go whenever you want it to go, cloud gaming makes sense. But then, like, as I sort of said, it's not the premium gaming experience that you get from a PC. So
we're getting a bit derailed from the question anyway. So ignoring the validity of cloud-based gaming, it's more the motivation. Are the hardware manufacturers trying to take the hardware out of the hands of gamers and make them basically subscribe to a service where they're essentially renting the games and the hardware? Is that an end goal here, or is that not a thing at all?
I don't think so. I mean, you never can rule out anything with companies, right? Like, they're always trying to make more money. So obviously this is potentially viable from that sense. But then you have to sort of look at it from a business side of things as well. Like, how much is the cloud gaming subscription? And are they confident enough in the product that they're going to be making more revenue from that as opposed to selling people new GPUs every couple of years? Because, like,
I guess it's a thing where, so seeing what's happening during cryptocurrency mining and now the AI boom, where they can make as much stuff as they want and they're able to extract money from somewhere for that stuff. So with the subscription based thing, they're able to milk all consumers on a regular basis, whereas there are a lot of gamers, and they'll be watching this Q&A now, they'll be in our audience, that have very old hardware, and they are perfectly content with that. They're not sitting there upset with the hardware. They're like, yep, I've got this, it's still going really well. All this new hardware, unimpressive. I'm going to wait X amount of years till this comes out, and then I'll think of upgrading. And we hear that all the time, and we're all for that, really. People think we're always telling you to buy a 9800X 3D or whatever. We're just showing you what that part can do. Whether or not you need it, totally up to you. Really, we're almost always of the opinion that if you can hold out with what you've got, definitely do that, opposed to spending money. So yeah, we're happy to show you what the new stuff does, but if that's not offering you enough of an upgrade, or it's not incentivizing you for one reason or the other, definitely don't buy it. And again, I haven't thought it through every angle of this. This is me quickly thinking about this question, but where they can extract money from you on a monthly basis for a subscription type service, then you're not spending money for 5, 6, 7, 8 years on PC hardware goes out the window. You're spending some amount of money on a monthly basis if you want to play computer games. That's where that, I guess, could make sense. I don't think that's what's happening. I don't think that's what they're pushing for, but if they were, I think logically that's probably what one of the motivating factors would be.
I think one of the things that probably swings me away from sort of suggesting this is what companies are aiming for is that you look at sort of, let's say, PC Game Pass, like Xbox Game Pass, which is another subscription service, but it's not cloud-based. So cloud-based is sort of like the next tier. It's like you're not just subscribing to get access to the games, you're subscribing for the games and the hardware. And, Microsoft has sort of been able to convince a group of people to play via PC Game Pass, but not a huge number. Like, Steam is still by far the most dominant platform for PC gaming, and a lot of people still buy the games outright. So if there's a service where they're not doing the best job of convincing people just to get the games for subscription purposes, then it's a whole other level to try and convince people to subscribe for access to the hardware as well. So they could try to do this, but it's always on the sort of consumers to come to the level of wanting it, if you know what I mean.
I think the theory goes more they're being
like you're being forced into it.
Yeah. Like if things keep going the way they're going, which again we're not saying that's necessarily the case, but I don't have an opinion on this. Just to make this clear, it's just this is sort of the thought process that if graphics cards keep getting harder to buy and more expensive, and motherboards become more expensive, and the DRAM stuff and whatever it is, there's always some sort of crisis, it seems, in the last 2 or 3 years. It just becomes increasingly difficult to buy a PC, which I personally don't think that's really what's happened to date. That's not my take on the situation, although I fully acknowledge that there have been challenges along the way. But all I'm getting at is this theory is that it just keeps getting harder and harder and harder. Before you know it, Jensen's $10,000 PC is your entry level.
Yeah, but I think with this question, it's sort of saying like they're forcing you out of buying that hardware. So therefore, the option will be subscribing to the subscription cloud-based service. But I guess my theory would be, why would the subscription service be any cheaper than the hardware? Like they're selling you the same thing. It's just that it's in a server somewhere as opposed to in your local PC. So it may appear like it would be good value because the monthly cost may be low, but over the total ownership of the PC hardware versus the cloud service, I don't get why they would try and make it cheaper for you. That, if anything, the cloud service would be worse value because instead of trying to compete on the consumer market where they're trying to sell you products at low margins and all that and compete on margins, now it's in some abstracted server somewhere, so they can charge you literally whatever amount
I don't think it's going to happen. And that's not my theory at all. I'm just saying, I think that's the theory.
That's the theory.
The theory is that they like gatekeep personal devices, and now they control, or it's like the data mining at a next level. Like the thing you're using for all your personal use and all your data isn't even at your physical premise anymore. And I know that's the case with like cloud storage and cloud computing in general, but it becomes that with everything. I don't know.
I can see that definitely being the reason. I think my chain of thinking would be it would probably be a poor value option for consumers, and that would make it hard to get people to convince to do that in the first place. And then on top of that, if there's even one competitor still making home hardware for people to buy, it's going to be really hard for the objectively worse way to play games to have this sort of pool to get that, because the whole system essentially requires all the players in the hardware market to all play along with that, so that you cannot buy the product at home.
So what you're saying is it'd be like if, for example, everyone who made DRAM was on the same page and doing the same thing?
Well, they have done that. There's certainly a cartel in some respects.
So you can see where the theory is coming from, though, right?
It's not just DRAM, though. It has to be the DRAM and the GPU and the CPU and the mother, all the manufacturers all working together, so that you cannot buy a home computer anymore.
I think the people who have been watching what's happened over the last few years in particular probably don't see that as being too far-fetched. Whereas, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen. That's not my theory. I'm just trying to sort of give the full context of this theory and where how it's come about. And I think, maybe I'm misrepresenting it, but I think like where they think things are heading and how things are going with all the different hardware cartels and...
Yep. Yeah, I personally, maybe they're trying to do this. I think gamers... I think PC gamers are too strong of a market, and too... it's probably more of a, what's the way to put it, like strong-headed consumers, right? Like they know what people won't use the Epic Games Store.
We will band together and make GPUs if we have to.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you can't even convince people to use the Epic Games Store, what luck you to convince people that all PC gamers should shift to cloud gaming?
There is an alternative, though. So again, this theory is there's not really an alternative. Anyway, I cannot wait for 10 years down the track, watching back this Q&A.
I think if there's even the slightest hint of things going that way, PC gamers it would be an apocalypse. Like they would be burning down NVIDIA headquarters and stuff like that. Like it just won't happen.
All right, that's
we'll see.
Okay, I'm going to leave that one alone and we'll move on to the next question because, alrighty.
Pretty related to the previous question, is PC gaming slowly becoming an expensive luxury?
I think in short, I think high-end PC gaming, definitely. And that sort of, so I'll read this out. And I think it's pretty relevant to this question. Yeah. So 5 years ago, there was
2020 pandemic.
That's
happening.
Right. That was 5 years ago. GeForce 30 series arrives, and it was brought into question whether or not the GeForce RTX 3080 was good value, because we and other reviewers thought it to be good value compared to like the GeForce 20 series, for example, sucked. Pascal was much better. The GeForce 10 series or the GTX series. Anyway, I put out a tweet that was well received by some and not well received by others. So I said, I think we need to acknowledge that the PC gaming landscape has changed. 10 years ago, PC gamers were predominantly thought to be nerds gaming in a basement. Today, it is very much a mainstream activity, and with a much larger audience, you get many more people with deep pockets who just want the best, and reviewers have no say in that. NVIDIA knows full well that these people exist, and that they are more than happy to be price gouged, and therefore, the 3090 exists. For everyone else, there's the 3080, 3070, and so on. So, I think that we've seen a continuation of that, right?
Yeah.
So, we got these sort of dumb high-end products that didn't really make sense, but people still wanted them. And I guess with the 4090 and then the 5090, they've done a better job of making those products make sense, so they're not at risk of damaging the brand reputation by being labeled dumb products. They're now
they've almost like mainstreamified them in a sense that they're not mainstream in the product category sense, but Pascal had one of these products. They had like the Titan X or whatever it was called, and that was sort of like the dumb option. But now the high-end options, as you say, they're sort of more...
It's the dumb desirable option.
Yeah.
So it's dumb in terms of price, but it's not really a dumb product anymore because the 5090 is extremely fast. They've actually, what they've done is they've dumbed down everything else under it to make it a less dumb product. So that's really what's happened. The high end has really become a luxury product, especially on the GPU side. And really, it's the NVIDIA stuff, because if you look outside of the NVIDIA bubble, which is a big bubble, admittedly, you've got the Radeon GPUs, which pretty well for this generation a good value or makes sense. And then even on the CPU front, I really don't think things have got that out of hand and that stupid compared to the Intel quad-core days, where you could buy an Intel Extreme processor for like $1,000 US, and maybe it had 6 cores or something. I think it was even quad cores that expensive. Whereas these days you can buy extremely powerful high-end desktop CPUs for well under $1,000, or under $1,000. But even like your flagship top of the range gaming CPU, $450, $500 US. So that's pretty reasonable. So again, I'm not saying that's cheap and everyone can buy that, but you can get pretty good CPU performance for not a huge amount of money. So it's really just stuff like the 5090 that they're trying to push, that sort of luxury premium PC gaming. I did a little bit of side research. This was stuff that we talked about recently in the Hardware Unboxed podcast. So if you guys are subscribed to the Hardware Unboxed podcast, you'll have heard a bit about this, though this is some updated, slightly different information. And I was really thinking, like, how difficult is it right now with everything that's going on, everything being a bit screwy, though GPUs have improved? What can you get? Like, first of all, what do you need and what can you get? So I think what do you need is obviously a subjective thing, but I've got 2 daughters that PC game a lot and love it. They've got quite high-end PCs, and realistically, I could go change their GPUs to like a 9060 XT 16GB, and they're, I'd say for the most part, not really going to notice the difference from, I think Zoe has an RTX 5080, and I think Tessa has like a 4060 Super. So admittedly going down. Yeah, a 9060 is quite a substantial downgrade. I don't think they would notice it for a lot of the games they play. And even then, like, they play, Forza Horizon 5 and things like that on a 4K screen. But I still think a 9060 XT is, going to be perfectly fine for a lot of that. So one of our larger PC parts retailers that also make full pre-built systems, PC Keski, we'll have heard about them on the channel before, went to their website, had a look at their pre-built options. Now, all of these pre-built options are fully built. So they're pre-built, but they're pre-built in the sense that they have Windows 11 Home installed. So you're getting that included in the price. So installation of Windows with all the drivers, it's done. You need to bring it home, plug all the necessary cables in, hit the power button, load up Steam or whatever it is, download your games, and you're playing. It's all optimized and ready to go. So BIOS is configured, Windows is configured, you're good to go. So for 1,350 Australian dollars, which realistically for a full-blown gaming PC isn't a lot of money. So my first computer that I built myself, which is going back a long time, that cost me 1,500 Australian dollars. And I had a 16 megabyte graphics card. So that's way back. But for 1,350 Australian dollars, as I said, full computer, built, Windows 11 installed, you're getting a Ryzen 5 5600. You're getting a Radeon RX 9060. So that's sort of the OEM only card. It's 8GB. DDR4 3200, 16GB, and a 1TB SSD, case, the whole lot. So it's not like a cutting edge computer by any means, but a Ryzen 5 5600 with a Radeon RX 9060 will play pretty much all games using medium settings, depending on the type of game they are. You could go all the way up to higher ultra if it's sort of an older game that doesn't use a whole lot of VRAM. But that will enable a really good gaming experience. It's a decent hardware combo. You can get well above 60 FPS using reasonable settings in most games. I think that's a pretty good deal. And then if you want to spend twice as much, so 2,700 Australian dollars, which that's quite a bit of money, but again, you'll be keeping this computer for, I would think, 5 years. So as a 5-year investment compared to what most things cost here in Australia, I mean, that probably doesn't even cover my rates. So, and I know what I'll have more fun doing. I mean, I do need a house, I guess, to live in, but, getting sidetracked slightly. But that comes with the Ryzen 5 7600X 3D. So that's a plenty powerful CPU for gaming. Comes with a 9070 XT. And it comes with 32 gigabytes of DDR5, 6,000 memory, 2 terabyte SSD. So that's I think that's like a reasonable high-end PC.
Mm-hmm.
And that's under 3,000 Australian dollars. Which again, I'm not saying that's not a lot of money, but that is a lot of computer for the money.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought of, this question is asking, is it slowly becoming an expensive luxury? PC gaming has never really been the entry-level gaming experience. If we're talking about all gaming, like consoles, the whole lot, everything, PC gaming has always been towards the higher end of the scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so this entry-level PC that you were talking about, 350 Australian dollars. Now, if you want to buy a PlayStation 5 Pro in Australia, I just looked up the price, it's 1,200 Australian dollars. So this PC, which is a very capable entry-level sort of PC, is about the price, slightly more expensive than the flagship console that you can buy, the PS5 Pro, right? So that's not crazy. That's very much, if I think about previous eras of consoles and things like that, and you sort of compare what do you get from an entry-level price perspective versus the price of a console. Consoles have always been cheaper. And yeah, there's been times towards the end of console cycles where you could start to build, using the same amount of money at certain points, a PC that's as good or faster than the consoles. But for large portions of these gaming generations, the PC has always been the more premium, expensive option, but that also gives you a better gaming experience, which is why it's so popular.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, is it becoming more of an expensive luxury? The way I see it is sort of what you were talking about earlier, where these companies, they're giving you more options to make it luxury if you want to go down that path. So there's more fancy cases, there's more fancy RGB fans and coolers and all these motherboards that are really overkill but look amazing. So you can build these crazy PCs that, are these sort of luxury items while also giving you great performance for games. But that was the case previously as well, when people would do more custom liquid cooling, when that was a really popular thing in the scene. And yeah, you weren't getting necessarily like 5090 type products, but you could spend like huge chunks of cash on your big custom liquid cooling setup. You could still do that today, of course, but that was an option previously as well. And so I just think that companies are sort of, as you said, are acknowledging that there's these high-end customers now for PC gaming that want luxury goods and are providing luxury items. So the thing that we're always trying to focus on is like, are they still providing options at reasonable prices for reasonable people in a normal sort of range that people would buy PCs in? And yeah, I think they've pulled the ladder up a little bit on
the low-end
stuff.
Two things can be true at once here.
Yeah.
So just before you guys go nuts in the comment section, I do think it sucks that this entry-level PC only has 8 gigabytes of VRAM after all of these years. So we're not suddenly shifting gears and flipping things and saying, oh, no, it's fine now. 8 gigabytes is fine as the entry level or whatever. Though that was a nuanced response as well. Like we said, $500 and $400 US GPUs with 8 gigabytes of RAM, total garbage. $200, $250, don't like it. We don't think there should be discrete GPUs at all, but that's more acceptable. We've always said that it's about the price, so you've got to factor that in. But even so, I think entry-level PC gaming, only having 8 gigabytes of VRAM does suck. But we're talking with that PC more about the current economic climate, how PCs have been going for years now, and that it's not, while we're not happy with the situation, it's not necessarily as dire as it's sometimes made out to be. And while we're saying that where the two things can be true at once, right, the 5090 is absurd. Not just in its performance, but its power usage, the size of it, the product, right? We weren't getting that in the Pascal era. Like, they were much smaller, compact graphics cards, cheaper to produce. They weren't as absurd as a 4090 and a 5090. And we have to also acknowledge that things have slowed down. Like, they can't keep making massive performance leaps every single generation. There's a lot of factors at play there. So we are getting, as Tim said, more premium, high-end products, and they genuinely are physically bigger, more power-hungry, higher-end products. But the concern that we have, and what's annoying a lot of gamers, is the fact that, the lower end has been getting, what's a term I can use that's appropriate? But having said that, the 9060 XT and even the 5060 Ti, to a degree, have lifted the bar compared to previous generations.
Yeah, I think that the way I see it is like the high-end stuff, the luxury goods, there's more of that now. The mid-range, I feel like the mid-range has always been reasonable. If you compare today to previous era mid-range sort of stuff, obviously things are becoming a little bit more expensive. There's inflation, all sorts of factors. But a mid-range PC today is very capable. It was capable a decade ago or whatever. The main issue for me is sort of the real entry-level stuff, where I feel like 10 years ago there were more entry-level options. Today, a lot of the entry stuff is just crapified. Like, it's just garbage that's intended to incentivize you to spend more money, which wasn't necessarily the case back then. But then, the gaming ecosystem is very different overall now than back in those days with PC gaming, where PC itself as a platform was more niche. So not as many games were available. A lot of games, the optimization and just features in games were garbage. So a lot of basic stuff was not available. And so that means that the PC platform as a whole was less attractive. So yeah, you can sort of say you were able to buy better entry-level hardware, but then the amount of games, the quality of games, and all of that was worse. So how do you factor that in?
It's so true as well. And that's like, movies used to be better, right? And in some ways, movies used to be better. But you think of a movie that was amazing and really good back when you were a kid, you go back and watch it now and you're like, oh.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that's true for all movies, but there's certainly movies where, you remember them being much better than maybe what they were.
Yeah, console exclusive in like the PS4 and PS3 eras, console exclusives just were like widespread. Like, there were loads of very popular games that you just could not play on PC, never came to the platform at all. These days, so yes, you have to spend in some ways more money on the actual hardware, but what that opens and gives you as an experience, I feel, is better than what you would have gotten back in those days when hardware was super cheap. And a lot of the things that we're getting today as well have improved the accessibility of the hardware, easier to build, less complications. Back in the earlier days of building PCs, it was a lot of things just would not work, not as compatible with one another. You had to upgrade a lot more often as well because things were moving so much faster. That entry-level PC that you would have bought would have been superseded within a year or two, whereas today, in some respects, that isn't as much of the case. So there's a lot of things going on there that makes this much more complicated than just low-end hardware is more expensive and less accessible, which I think is true. But there's so many more things that have improved with the PC platform that's easy to, I guess, lose sight of a bit when it comes to sort of assessing everything as a whole. All right, and that'll do us for part 2 of this Q&A series. If you missed part 1, now's the opportunity to go back after watching this video to see the part 1 questions, which were largely about the DRAM stuff. So if you are interested in the sort of DRAM crisis sort of questions and our thoughts on that, part 1 is the part for you. Outside of that, there'll probably be a part 3 up on the channel soon, depending on when we get around to releasing it. So stay tuned for that. You can subscribe and make sure that's in your inbox, which I see on desktop for YouTube. They changed how the subscription box works. So that's nice. Outside of that, we've got Patreon if you want to sign up and become a member and you get access to cool things. We've got Discord, BTS content, not the band, just behind the scenes stuff. We've got live streams. What else have we got? There's a few other things.
Q&A stuff.
Q&A stuff.
Which we're currently doing.
Ad-free podcasts, a few other things.
We were doing? We'll be doing more of it.
Yeah, well, we always say that and then we don't. But yeah, we'll say we're doing more BTS stuff.
I was saying the Q&A stuff.
Oh, the Q&A stuff. No, we do that pretty regularly.
Yeah, we do.
So, yeah.
We're good at that part.
Yeah, we're not hopeless on that front. All right, so that does it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Tim.
I'm your host, Steve.
We'll see you in the next one.